I remember when I was in my friend's room, his stepsister ends up walking up to the door and she ends up basically telling me to like follow her, but I'm right beside my friend that's literally right beside me, and I look at her basically signaling no, like it's a bad idea. But right when my friend looks at me and he says, yo, I gotta go to the bathroom real quick, I'll be back after a bit, I remember he ended up leaving, and that's when this girl came into his bedroom saying, Bubba, we don't have much time, here, follow me. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba and welcome back to another insane, but I gotta say crazy story. Now today's story all takes place back in high school, and this was my grade 12 year. Now in grade 12, I was a really basic guy, not knowing what I wanted to do with the future, and to be honest, I had really no idea what was going on in my life. Like if someone could go back in time and tell me back in grade 12 that I was gonna become a creator online that tells crazy stories, I wouldn't believe them whatsoever. But basically, there was one time in my grade 12 year where I remember I had this one buddy of mine that I was really good friends with. Now he has some personal family stuff going on in his life that, I'm not gonna lie, wasn't the greatest. He had a lot of things going on, and well, from having divorced parents to end up getting a step sibling and all this crazy stuff, he was the type of person that always tried to stay motivated. From watching Andrew Tate to basically pushing himself to listen to motivational speeches and reading motivational books, he was the type of guy that you would want to hang around to basically think about your future. But obviously, every time I hung out around him, he always made me think about my future. And to be honest, if you guys recognize who I'm talking about, you guys probably understand the story that I told, I think it was a couple days ago. So this story is about the same people. So if you guys haven't seen that story, I advise you guys go watch it so it gives a better sense of what I was talking about. But going on with this story, I remember I was in the school hallway walking with him. And as I was walking with him, I remember he ends up running up to me, and he runs up to me in the most weirdest way because he looks at me and says, yo, Bubba, I have a question, bro. Do you think I'm like uptight? What do you mean uptight? Well, like, you know, like not fun. No, I think you're fun. Like, why wouldn't you be? Well, like, I don't know, man. Like this one girl, like I was talking to her and like she says like I'm really like obtuse and like boring, and like I don't know why. Like I don't know what's wrong with girls nowadays. Which to be fair, like he was a little uptight, but I was trying to be his friend. I didn't want to say that. But at the same time, since he was pressing me on and on about it, it got to the point where I looked at him and said, okay, listen, dude, I'm not gonna lie. Like, yeah, maybe the motivational stuff maybe needs to be toned down a bit. Like you're a bit overdoing it. Yeah, but like, don't like girls like guys that are like, you know, the man and like over the top? Yeah, only in the movies. To be honest, girls our age don't really care about that kind of stuff. At that moment, I remember he ended up looking at me. He's like, bro, Bubba, can you like teach me like how to pull girls, bro? Wait, what? Like, come on, think about it, man. Like, I'm about to go to college, and like, I really don't have any sense of like how to pull girls, I guess, anymore. I remember I ended up shaking my head yes, and basically that day after school, we ended up planning on teaching him how to get girls. It sounded really cringe and really weird, and to be fair, like this wasn't the first time I taught someone how to pull girls, but I ended up agreeing anyways. And after school that day, I ended up basically driving over to his place. When I drove over there, I remember I parked my car in his driveway, and instantly one thing I noticed was out the window, I ended up seeing a girl that was his stepsister looking down on us through the window. Now I thought this was really weird, and I remember I decided to just ignore it and not tell my friend anything about it. But let's just say when we got inside, one thing we instantly noticed was that his sister, or his stepsister I should say, was literally in the living room wearing booty shorts and looks at me and my friend and says, hey boys, what are you guys up to? Oh, leave us alone, bro. We're just going upstairs and like doing some stuff. And I remember I just ended up looking at her and just waving hi, and me and my friend, we ended up just going upstairs. When me and him were going up the stairs, I remember the girl ended up following us, his stepsister. My friend got super annoyed to the point where when we finally walked inside his room, he ended up slamming the door on his stepsister saying, bro, stop following us. This has nothing to do with you. Okay, well, I guess I'll talk to you later, Bubba. And she ends up going back into her room. And that's when my friend looks at me and says, okay, Bubba, I need you to tell me like, what's the best way to like walk up to a girl? At that moment, I ended up teaching him some of my methods that I would do to like approach women and stuff. And to be fair, I made a video on this as well way back when. So if you guys do want to watch that, just search it up on the channel. But I ended up basically telling him like the most basic things that I would do when it comes to pulling chicks. And he's actually got to the point where he started writing down these things, and it was actually really funny. But then after a while, I want to say like after like 30 minutes of me teaching him some stuff, he ended up asking questions that I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't comfortable answering. Like he was asking me questions like, oh, so like when I want to do like the Duvel's Tango with her, like how do I start it off? And at that moment, I didn't know what to say. So I was like, honestly, bro, like it's kind of like in the moment, like you don't really think about it. It kind of just happens, if I'm being honest with you. What? That makes no sense. Like there has to be some kind of like science behind it. I don't know why, but this guy like really like tried to make it all numbers and factual evidence, when in reality, doing the Duvel's Tango and pulling chicks is all based on feelings. And if your feelings don't end up working out with the other girl, then GG's, like you're not pulling the girl whatsoever. Anyways, as me and him were talking more and more on, I guess, things about the Duvel's Tango and how to get it, I remember his stepsister ends up coming towards the room and opening the door slowly. And that's when she says, oh, are you guys talking about doing it? Oh my gosh, guys. You guys are so weird. You guys are like gay or something. And at that moment, I remember my friend ended up walking up to the door, opening the door wide open and yelling at her saying, "You don't know what you're talking about. You have no idea what's going on in here. Like, why are you even here? Like, just leave us alone. Like, you're not even actually like a real person." And he ends up slamming the door on her once again. No, I actually felt bad at this point for the girl. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, she just wanted to be part of the conversation, but like, it was whatever. Anyways, from there, I remember me and him started discussing more about it, and he was writing more things down. And I remember it got to the point where like my friend's mom ended up coming home, and my friend's mom ends up opening the door, and my friend was already so triggered from the last times his stepsister walked in that he looks over at the door and says, "Get out of here," I said. And, "Oh, hey mom, sorry, I didn't know it was you." "Oh, hey honey, what's going on here?" "Hi Bubba, I didn't expect you to be here today." Hi. Yeah, I was invited over. My bad. I probably should have told you before, or my parents should have called you before." "Oh no, it's totally okay. You're always welcome." "Okay, well, leave the door open, please, and I'm gonna head downstairs, okay?" "Okay, mom." I remember his mom ends up going downstairs, and the door was left wide open. And me and him, we started to discuss, like, I guess, other ways to pull girls and funny ways that, you know, a dynamic duo could pull girls. And as I started to explain the game Have You Met Ted, I remember his stepsister ends up basically walking across the hallway and saw me in there still, and she looks back and says, "Come here, come here." And that's when I kept signaling her, saying like, "No, like, I'm literally right beside your brother right now," or stepbrother, I should say. Like, I'm not coming near you. And then as like my friend continued ranting, it got to the point where he's like, "Oh, I gotta go to the bathroom real quick." And I remember seeing his stepsister running back into her room as fast as possible, and he got up and went to the bathroom. As he went to the bathroom, I remember I was super confused on what was going on, but then his stepsister ends up walking into her brother's room when I was just sitting there, and she looks at me and says, "Bubba, let's go." "What? No, your brother's literally in the bathroom. He's gonna pop up any moment." "Oh, come on, Bubba. He won't notice anything." And that's when she ended up coming closer and closer, and she ended up sitting on my lap, and well, one thing led to another. We ended up actually doing the Devil's Tango. I gotta say, it was definitely one of the fastest times I ever did the Devil's Tango. But it was so weird to the point where I remember I kept panicking the whole time that he was just gonna walk in. But surprisingly, my friend takes the longest poops ever, to the point where he didn't end up coming back like an hour later when everything was done and over with. I gotta say, it was crazy getting away with it, but at the same time, I felt pretty bad, to the point where after that day, I could never, I guess, go back to that house the same way, nor did I ever end up actually going back. And it even got to the point where like his stepsister would DM me on like Instagram and stuff, but I would always ignore it because I don't know, I felt bad. Okay, like I did this guy's sister. I don't know if you guys have ever done a friend's sister or even their mom, comment down below. But if you're not cool like that, yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to another insane story. So this story is about when I saw my friend literally dating his own sister, and it gets really awkward. So trust me, if you guys don't have a strong stomach, I don't think you should watch this video. But if you do watch the end of this video, make sure you guys click that subscribe button so I know you guys want to see more. Anyways, this all starts off back when I was actually funny enough in grade 11. Now, quick reminder, all the stories I tell didn't happen in one school. If you guys don't know, I've actually been to 3 different high schools. So, you know, I've been around, literally and mentally. Anyways, going on, I remember back when I was in grade 11, the high school I went to, a lot of girls were really awkward, but I'm not gonna lie, a lot of them were attractive. And not only that, but there was one time where my buddy one time walked up to me and he said, "Yo, Bubba, bro, I'm not gonna lie, man. Trust me, bro. I took all your advice on how to pull girls, and I got a girlfriend, and she is literally amazing." I remember I looked at him and I did not remember what advice I gave him. So I asked him, "Wait, sorry, which advice did I give you?" And the advice I told him was, honestly, follow your heart, and whatever girl you think is best for you, just go with it. He basically ended up repeating that to me, and I realized that that advice ended up being taken too literally. You guys will see. Just keep listening. I remember, you know, I was happy for him at first because obviously I didn't know who the girl was. And me and him, we were basically celebrating together. And then he said, "Yo, Bubba, tonight, if you want, we can go see a movie with my girl, and like you can bring your own girl, and like we gotta do like a double date thing. Are you down for that?" I remember when he said that, I was kind of just not really wanting to go at first because like I'm not one for really double dates. Like I think double dates are the dumbest things ever invented. But at the same time, you know, I was happy for my buddy, so I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll go, man." He got super happy and ended up walking away. And I know, even though I was somewhat happy for him, I realized that this was the most dumbest thing I've ever done. Just keep watching, you'll see why. I remember after school came around, and some rumors were going around the school that I was told of, that apparently my buddy's sister, the one that got a girlfriend, his sister ended up also getting a new boyfriend. I found it really odd how they both got into a relationship at the same time. But at the same time though, I don't know, maybe it was just fate. It was just a coincidence. I don't know. I didn't really overthink it too much, but a lot of people are saying that since that rumor came out, they're dating each other. Now, I thought it was a joke. I laughed at it a couple of times when people told me about the situation, and I just found it hilarious. And then I remember I walked up to one of my buddies and I'm like, dude, you guys hear the rumor that like apparently like he's dating his sister? They all looked at me and they're like, bro, he is. I looked at him and I'm like, what do you mean he is? Like, no, he's not. They looked at me again with their eyes wide open saying, dude, he's literally actually dating his sister. Look at his wallpaper when you go to class with him. I remember I looked at both of them and I was like kind of just weirded out, but at the same time I was like, whatever. So I ended up going to my next class and we sat beside each other in that next class. And when I sat beside him, I really wanted to see his phone. Usually he had his phone flipped up, but this time he had his phone flipped down. He only had the camera facing up and he did not show anyone his phone. I remember I asked him like, yo bro, like let me see what your girl looks like. He looks at me and he's like, oh nah bro, it's a surprise, trust me, like you'll see her tonight, she's on fire, like trust me, you'll love her bro. I remember I looked at him and I'm like, so like where'd you meet this girl? He looks at me and he's like, dude, trust me man, like I met her, like it was just fate man, like I don't know, we're just so relatable. No really, is what I thought in my head. But at the same time, I remember I looked at him like, dude, I really just want to see this girl now, like can you just show me who she is, because I heard a rumor that you're dating her sister and it's just getting in my mind. I got straight up honest with him and then he said, you know what bro, you'll meet her tonight. That's so dumb, people think I'm dating my sister. Anyways, yeah, just you'll meet her tonight, trust me. Okay, is what I said, and I ended up walking away. When I walked away and saw my other buddies again that told me that he was actually dating his sister, they looked at me and said, bro, so did you see it? Did you see his wallpaper? Remember I looked at both of them and I like literally thought in my mind that he was probably trolling them, saying that like, you know, he was dating his sister just because it was a good rumor going around. It was just, you know, a joke. So I looked at both of them and I said, bro, like he's just trolling you guys. He said, like, trust me, just to kind of get the rumor to rest, because that's what I usually would do. If there was like a really dumb rumor going around, I would just lie about like it being a rumor and just die it down, I guess, if the rumor was true. And anyways, I basically said, oh yeah, like he was just trolling you guys. And they were both like kind of just like confused, but then walked away. Knowing that I put that rumor to rest was a good thing. It was a manly thing to do, or in a way a good friend would do. And then I remember when I went home that day after school, I ended up getting ready and I called like over 6 different girls. One of them was for sure going to pick up for us going to the movies that night. One of them ended up calling me back saying, hey Bubba, like do you still want to go to that movie tonight? Like I'm so down. Oh yeah, what time should I pick you up? OMG, like can you pick me up at like 7-ish if the movie starts at 8? Because like I need like some time to get ready, but at the same time I still want to order popcorn on time. Yeah, I didn't really care why she was telling me that, but I ended up telling her, yeah, so like we gotta be at the theater at like 8 though. Like you good with that? Like at least 8:30 so we can meet up with him. Wait, him is what she said afterwards. I said, yeah, like we're meeting up with the guy, like, you know. She literally says over the phone, OMG, like don't you realize that like he's dating his sister? OMG bro, how many people was he trolling with this, is what I said. And I ended up telling her, nah, he's just trolling about that, trust me, like you're good. She ends up being like, oh okay, and ends up getting ready. 2 hours later, I end up going to pick her up and we end up driving to the theater. And when I did, I remember I ended up meeting up with my buddy and I saw him there first. I saw him there and I'm like, yo dude, where's your girlfriend? And his girlfriend ends up being right behind him, and it was his little sister of 2 years. Reminder, this guy was in grade 10, same age as me, and his sister was in grade 8. This was disgusting. I remember I looked at him like, dude, that's your sister. Are you trolling me right now? Because I thought he was joking. I didn't want to believe that he was actually dating his sister. I refuse. He looks at me, he's like, dude, you gotta understand, man, like me and her, we're so relatable, and like, you know, like she's really attractive and like she's great. Dude, that's your sister, is what I told him out loud, screaming in the theater when we were outside the theater. Everyone started looking at us and he looks at me, he's like, dude, tone it down, like chill, trust me, let's just go see the movie, I'll talk about it there. We ended up going to the theater and I ended up walking with this girl, and this girl that I was with that I brought was so awkwarded out, she didn't want to be there anymore, like she was grossed out. And then I remember as I was like, you know, going to our chairs and we sat down, we started talking, me and him, we started talking. I'm like, dude, that's your actual sister. And then he says, yeah, but like bro, you gotta understand, like I care about her more than anyone, man. That's great, man, but she's your sister. Like, don't you find it gross? I remember his sister was cuddling him as if like they were actually like in a romantic relationship. And then I remember I kind of just started ignoring it and just trying to watch the movie because the movie started. And I remember midway through the movie, as this girl was like cuddling up against me that I had brought, and then the girl that he brought, aka his sister, was cuddling up against him. It was super gross because they ended up kissing in the theater. His own sister that was 2 years younger was making out with her older brother that was 2 years older. I don't know. I was grossed out. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't be there anymore. I literally stood up and I literally said to him, bro, that is your goddamn sister. Everyone in the movie just kind of like went quiet and the lights came on. I remember he looked at me. He's like, dude, like you really had to do that in front of everyone? Yeah. And I'm going to talk to your parents about it. I remember we ended up leaving and we ended up like basically not being friends anymore. And then let's just say you ended up getting his sister pregnant. But you know what? That's a conversation for another time that we don't don't have to talk about on this channel because this was just straight up incest and disgusting. All right, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba and welcome back to another insane story. So this story is a continuation of the last story time I did about, well, this guy dating his own sister. If you guys haven't seen that story, I highly advise you guys going to go check that out because it honestly was the most insane thing ever. Where we last ended off in that story was basically he ended up telling me, and I ended up finding out, technically speaking, that he was literally dating his own sister. And I remember when I first saw this go down and everything, I panicked and I thought it was gross and I ended up leaving and basically not talking to him anymore. Because for a guy who flexes that he dated his own sister is honestly really gross. But at the same time, I remember a couple months went by and I remember I basically stopped interacting with this dude because, well, everyone in the school knew that he was dating his sister and things got really awkward. But then I remember one time he came to school in kind of like a panic. You know that feeling when you look at someone and you know that their day is just not going good? That's basically what I noticed that was happening to this guy who was dating his sister. So I remember I ended up walking up to him and I basically started talking to him like, hey, like what's going on? Like, I know we haven't talked in a bit and stuff. We can put that behind us, but like, are you okay? He looked at me. He ended up saying, bro, like, honestly, man, like, I know you find me weird for dating my sister, but like things just got really serious between us. And like, you know, I'm kind of like in like a deep hole right now, bro. I ended up looking at him and I told him, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean a deep hole? Is everything all right? And then he ended up saying, bro, I got my sister literally pregnant. At first I looked at him as if he was joking and I literally dabbed him up and said, bro, like relax, bro. Like you're trolling me, bro. Like there's no way. And then he told me, no, bro, like I'm being serious, bro. Like I actually like got her pregnant and I don't know what to do because like I have no idea. The first thing I thought in my mind was, bro, did you not use protection? Because obviously anyone that's doing the devil's tango should be using protection. But in his mind, he didn't care and I guess he was careless and ended up just getting her pregnant. Now, one thing I'm going to teach you guys is that in high school, that doesn't tend to happen to people. People are careless and they end up, you know, basically not having grade A pullout game like I did back in high school. So I remember I told him, bro, like, what are you planning on doing? He said, well, I don't know because our parents don't really want to have the baby because, you know, it's kind of hard to explain how me and her started dating and stuff. But at the same time, I don't know, bro. Like, I might just go back to my hometown and just grow up with the child. First thing I thought was, you're keeping it? Because there is no way that you can have a sibling give birth to your kid. Like, it was the most weirdest thing ever. So I remember I told him, yo, bro, just like go see like a clinic and see what they can do, man. Like, I'll even drive you. Because he couldn't drive at the time. I remember he looks at me with a smile and says, you really do that with me, bro? And I ended up telling him, yeah, man, like, I'll help you out, sure. Boy, did I regret saying that. Because I remember the next day, he ended up basically calling me up in the middle of the night and said, yo, bro, my girl really needs to see a clinic. Something feels off about her. I remember I ended up basically waking up and basically getting ready and stuff. By the way, it wasn't actually that late. It was only like, I want to say 9:30, almost like 10. And basically, I got up, I ended up getting in my car and everything. And I remember my mom asked me, where are you going, Bubba? And I ended up telling her, I'm going to the hospital. I ended up driving my car over to his place. And basically, when I got there, I ended up parking my car in front of his house. When I did, I remember seeing literally him and his sister come out, and his sister did not look pregnant at all. I remember when they both got in my car, his sister instantly says, wasn't this the guy that literally like made fun of our relationship? And then her brother says, or her boyfriend or whichever said, oh no, like he's here to help. Like he's really chill with it. Don't worry about it, sweetie. You guys have no idea how much I was cringing out when I heard like literally her brother called his own sister sweetie as if they were an old married couple. Like what? So I remember I basically started driving them to the hospital. Honestly, on the way there, I kept looking at his sister thinking there is no way this girl's pregnant. She doesn't look pregnant because most chicks that are pregnant, they usually have like a big stomach and stuff, right? Like they look fat. But then I remember as I was driving to the hospital, I mentioned, hey, like, yo, is your sister like actually pregnant? Are you guys like just trolling me, bro? Because like, I'm gonna be honest, you don't look pregnant. His sister took huge offense to that, like huge offense, and said, are you saying I'm not pregnant with our baby? Are you serious? Like, who do you think you are? At that moment, I realized that her hormones were going through the roof and she was definitely pregnant. But at the same time, I still had my disbelief. So anyways, I kept driving them to the hospital. I remember when we got there, I parked my car and basically they ended up getting out and I ended up going inside the hospital with them. I remember when we went in there, they ended up having to show their like IDs to basically go inside the hospital to get like, you know, everything situated on the computer. And when the nurse saw that these two were brother and sister and they were literally doing the devil's tango and had to explain how he got his sister pregnant, the nurse looked at me as if I was crazy to even be helping them out. I remember basically like the nurse the entire time was basically trying to ask, so like, where are your parents? I really want to understand understand the whole situation in general. Should I contact them? I remember when he said that, the brother in the relationship ended up standing up, and my buddy ended up yelling at the nurse saying, "Why would you want to call our parents? Who do you think you are? I'm the patient. You're the nurse. We're not allowed to contact my parents unless I say so." Like, he got so upset, and everyone kept looking, and honestly, at this point, I think everyone knew that these two people were insane. Anyways, going on with the story, I remember basically when we were sitting down in the waiting room, it was a funny comment that a guy made that was beside me, and he knew what was going on. He literally said, "So, like, I'm guessing they're from Alabama." And it was the funniest thing because I ended up laughing because there was a common joke for, like, you know, people from Alabama doing it with their own cousins. But then in my mind, you know, it's weird thinking he literally got his own sister pregnant. So I remember going on with the story, I kind of just started, like, basically sitting there and waiting. And the nurse eventually came out and said, can I get the couple that are siblings? I remember everyone in the waiting room started looking around thinking, this is insane. Who is siblings and dating? And basically they stood up and they basically started going to the nurse. I ended up going with them, and when I did, I remember seeing them drag her to a room where you basically scan for the baby and, like, get, like, photos and, like, basically being able to see the baby. I remember when she laid down on that chair and they put this, like, weird gelatin on her stomach, I was like, bro, there's no way. I think this is gonna be so fake. There's no way. There has to be, like, air in her stomach or something. And when they started scanning and looking for the baby, they saw a legit child in her stomach that was growing. Like, it was the most weirdest thing ever. And I started thinking, oh my goodness, that is disgusting. And I don't know why, but my buddy at the moment when that was happening, as they were checking on the baby and, like, you know, we were basically seeing the baby in a monitor, my friend looked at me and said, "Bubba, since you helped out, when she has to give birth, I want you to be the godfather." Huh? What? No, is what I wanted to say. But I ended up saying, "Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I got your back." When in reality, I wish I didn't. And it was so awkward because on the way driving them back home, I remember they just kept looking at me thinking, oh, like, now he knows and stuff. And it just got super awkward. The baby was not scheduled for another, like, 6 months to be born. So it was kind of weird. But I can tell you one thing. Every day when he came to school, that guy was attached to me like there was no tomorrow. Since I was the only guy that really understood his situation, or sorry, pretended to understand his situation to the point where he started to really appreciate me. I don't know. It felt nice to have a friend, but knowing that my friend was dating his own sister and got it pregnant is just ultimately disgusting. But the real story is when she gave birth, and that was when things really got bad. But I guess we'll save that for a story for another time. Anyways, guys, that's basically it for today's story. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And like I always say, fall for more embarrassing stories. Peace out, guys.